Welcome to Recouped the podcast, where we uncover the depths of sustainability and its impact on the world.
We're your hosts, Vicky
and Michelle.
And together we'll explore what it means to live more sustainably. Dude, did you know? Okay. So we were talking about funerals today, and I know we were like doing some research. And I did some research. Did you know, I keep saying did you know the ghosts, like the old ghosts with the sheets on the bodies, and they're like, ooh, and they're spooky, actually comes from back in the day when people would wrap their deceased in sheets.
Oh, yeah.
And
then they weren't really dead. Oh, my God.
Well, actually, because in the history that I read, no, it's for real. Because what they did is back in the day, they would sit, and this is Western style, right? Or Western United States style. They would do shifts to sit with the dead to make sure they were dead. So actually, you are probably right. There is probably a few people that's...
oh no, Grandma!
Like, where are you? Can you imagine? That'd be so scary.
Well, no. That's what happened too. And like I've heard about it in the morgues. They would attach bells to the toes because then they go in those pantries or the
in the refrigerator thing.
Yeah, and then they would listen for bells if the person was.
That is so spooky.
Because I guess they didn't have the technology
so spooky
to really determine if someone was dead. They could just be.
That is awful.
Having an arrhythmia and you can't detect a heartbeat.
Oh my God, I die. That would be so scary. Okay, well, when I'm fully dead, so we talked about this before, but when I am fully dead, I want to be composted. Right, we talked about that.
Because we have talked about it.
Yeah.
We're weird about This is about death, this episode, except we're probably going to be laughing. We're going to be laughing.
But it's just about funerals.
So, because we were just pondering like sustainability and environment, compostable, biodegradable.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking like bodies.
I know.
Because what happens to our bodies? Like, aren't we supposed to be putting that back into the earth to keep it healthy?
Yeah.
Like along with the plastic, like the landfills, like there's a lot of people.
I know.
That could be replenishing.
I
but
know.
we put them in cement boxes full of embalming fluid.
I know. And that's not...
And then we keep the grass green on top of them by mowing and putting pesticides.
I know. So it's like expensive.
And not sustainable.
And it's not eco-friendly.
Yeah.
It's talk about embalming.
But I think it's because Western culture is very afraid of death.
That is correct.
But everybody has it.
And everybody has, you're right,
everybody has death.
Everyone has death, has experienced it closely or second, third degree, whatever it is. But you're right. No, you're right.
Yeah, we all die, so it should just be a normal part of life. So like birth and death.
Yeah. So I guess in this case, I know it's taboo. I know it's dark to talk about death and talk about funerals, but we're going to let's accept the fact that it happens and that people should talk about it, because I know in our own experiences, people that mourn don't not want to talk about the person that has left us. Yeah. Right? Or they don't want to be forgotten, or the person that's left, or the people that have left. Yeah. Right? Like, I mean.
And there's also just like the taboo, like of a funeral.
Yeah.
It is a big stressor on people.
It is a big stressor for multiple reasons. One, if the person that passed away didn't make decisions prior to their departure, maybe it was unexpected. Who knows? Maybe they're young. But let's say
because you think like, oh, listen, son or daughter, like, I want to start planning for when I pass away, and then they're like, no, but
but like we can't talk about that. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's never going to happen. Please, no. But then when it does, if there's not that stuff put in,
it's if
place,
it's not,
and you're left with
making those hard decisions and those expenses.
You don't know what
to
do.
And then you hear about like how families like they duke it out because they want
families Who's break apart. Pay for it?
But not only that, but families break apart because the decisions, right? Or the feeling like one of them is supposed to be a decision maker, and this other person's like, no,
We're still trying to make the person that is in death after death, like still trying to meet their expectations.
Correct. Oh, that's tough.
That is a tough one.
So just write it down. If you want people to follow through with what you want for your life, for your death, lay out those expectations and don't make it weird to talk about it. Because
like we've talked about it before too. Like when you're at like funerals or people are writing obituaries or saying all these things about this person, did that person know you thought all those things?
Oh my gosh.
So we need to be saying that stuff
Yes.
to them while they're alive.
Okay, so as you say that, I thought about this and I felt like it might be really morbid, but I'm like that weirdo who's going to do it to people anyways. I always wanted to, at people's birthdays, to be like, what would, like this. Hear ye, hear ye.
Yeah.
Here's Michelle's birthday. If we were at her funeral and you're going to write your speech about what you want to say about her, what would you say to her or about her?
Or the things that you miss the most about them when she's not here.
Yeah. So like those type of things. I do think about that often. It's like, what would you say at someone's funeral? Great.
And that's something
now
you have to
tell
live
them
with now.
Yeah, now tell them while they're here. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, because I think that's part of that issue of like not talking about death is then all of a sudden we're faced with the loss of the person that we
Yeah.
loved and all of this unspoken,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. The things you wish that you could have, would have.
or the complex grief, which we've looked into just, you know, on our own. But,
Yeah.
but on a sustainable note, funerals,
They're not eco-friendly.
no.
They're
Everything that has to do with death.
economically
isn't.
unfriendly. They price gouge. They, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to turn some pages here so I can look at
Okay.
these numbers. But we did just do some research.
Yeah.
And we have some numbers here on what, you know, an average funeral or
Yeah.
a loved one's death is doing to the environment.
Yeah.
How it impacts.
Spill it, girl.
Yeah.
Tell us a good.
So did you know, I'm sure this is probably pretty common knowledge, but the average funeral costs about $9,000.
Yeah.
I think we saw when we were looking, it was like $8,000 to $10,000 is like the average.
and that's average.
And that's
probably like bare.
a lot.
Yeah. That is a lot. That's a period. That's a lot. Just to put someone to rest. That is a lot.
Yeah, because like if we think about it, every single person that's born is going to die eventually.
And someone's making money off of
Yes,
it in a way that
it is.
it's not
That's
necessary.
That's what really grinds my gears is the
know.
commercial profit off of.
Well, and it's like, and
death.
here's the other thing, right? It costs money. So like one of the procedures, right? Oh, here's the thing that I was going to tell you that I thought was interesting. Embalming. That's one of the things that you have to pay for, or they tell you that you need to pay for. But real world, we had talked about it, is like to keep people looking good until the day of the service,
Yeah.
right? So, but real world, way back in the Civil War, that's when some doctor created embalming. So all these soldiers that would die at war, so that they can, to basically preserve the body so they could be shipped home for proper burial, and so that their families could hopefully see their sons
yeah.
in a state that wasn't
they
complete
remember.
decomposing, right? And so in actuality, in real world now, you don't actually have to be embalmed.
No.
And that's a cost.
And there are so
then
many
that's a
alternatives.
chemical.
And the one problem is like I don't think people are even aware of the alternatives
Yeah,
to
what were the-
embalming.
Yes.
Unless you bring it up at the time,
Correct.
like when it's happening.
Or
you
do-
can say like I don't want formaldehyde used on my loved one.
No. However, I would like to be, what was it? The ice, the refrigerator,
What is it called?
basically like dry ice, but for your
'cause
body.
Dry ice is one of the
ways to preserve your
Yeah.
body was like dry ice, Techni ice, and then there was another cool one that I can't remember.
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Non-toxic embalming, and there's also the hydro cremation. That's what you said. If you like to be a mermaid, and you just love water.
Have y'all heard of hydro cremation? It's
awesome.
kind of wild, but it is pretty cool. You basically are put in this liquid, essentially, that has a chemical like lye in it that dissolves your body
at a faster pace.
at a fast pace, and all you're left with bones. And then the water ends up being sterile liquid, and then they incinerate the bones or something like that, and then that's hydrocremation.
Yeah,
Right? That was
wild.
yeah. So
But there are alternatives.
there are alternatives. One of them being why I want to be composted.
Yeah, and there are a lot of like places that you can look. Like when we were doing research for this, I found out that there's a place just right down the road that offers green burial options. So a lot of places actually do offer it. You just have to ask.
But wait, can you describe to our listeners what green burials are, or what a green?
So a green cemetery consists of, they do not permit vaults.
Oh,
so like
yes.
concrete vaults. They use they
It's
do not
almost
allow non-biodegradable caskets or any embalming agencies. They use like natural textiles to wrap, shrouds to wrap
Yes,
the
to wrap
bodies
the
in.
bodies.
And a lot of them have like open bottoms, so they are replenishing the earth.
Yeah, so that basically they're laying on the earth. And like they recommend like using pine wood so that it can decompose and break down and different things like that too.
Yeah, so those are cool. And I don't think the price point.
I think I read somewhere it was like half the price, maybe depending on where. I saw one of the most expensive of the green eco-friendly ways to bury yourself, I guess, was about 5,000-ish.
Yeah.
Which is about half the price of like a traditional burial, so like a funeral. So
going back here to this page, where we break down some numbers. So we have from Wired.com. 1.6 million tons of reinforced concrete.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yes, that's a lot.
In the industry. 800,000 gallons of formaldehyde. Yeah.
Which then when you finally decompose, whenever this box eventually decomposes, that goes into the ground.
And then I guess for like a carbon footprint, so cremation is still not completely carbon neutral because it's about, per person to be cremated is about 500 miles in your car. Yeah. That equivalent.
When I read it was like 500-ish pounds of carbon dioxide that gets emitted too. And that was from the Wired article.
Yeah. But then we do have some good numbers. So it sounds like about 54% of Americans are now considering the
cremation?
green.
The green kind.
Yeah, green,
oh, okay.
A green funeral.
Oh, that's good.
So that's on the up. We want to just keep promoting and normalizing.
And making it more available and accessible to people.
So I guess some of the stigmas, like why people would choose embalming, is basically we've learned it's just a beauty standard.
It is not an actual necessary.
It's not necessary at all.
Unless you're going days and days between the person's passing to when they actually do the service, and if we're going to have an open casket. Right? But to keep them beautiful. Otherwise, it actually isn't a necessary process to...
Yeah, it's not necessary. It's just purely cosmetic for the people viewing the body.
Yes.
To like limit that shock factor, I guess. But it's completely unnecessary. And you can ask at the funeral home for the non-toxic embalming agency if you did want to do the traditional open casket, the Western funeral culture uses. So that's always something to think of. There are other options too.
I know. I want to tell you about one.
Okay.
One that my mom probably wouldn't be happy with, which I will share, Lao style, traditional funerals. But I was trying to remember the name, and I need to look it up really quick. But there is a company, and it looks like there's only 2 states that have this approved method.
Oh.
But there's this company in Washington State and a company in Colorado that basically will take your human body and turn it into compost.
Yeah.
And there's a couple
things. Is it
things.
Let Your Love Grow?
No.
Oh.
It's called that one's probably the one that's in Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's another one called, I have to find it. But it's a company based in Seattle, and they basically will turn your body into compost, and it takes like 2 months.
Yeah.
It's a whole process, just like compost. And then they give you an option to either come and get the soil, or you're the composted person, and you could do what you want with it.
And that's with like the whole body.
Yeah.
So that's like a really green way to do it.
Yes. And then, or you can donate it, I guess, and just let them put it somewhere. But I heard the story. So it was on NPR. It was an NPR article, NPR, like a little quick blip on a podcast, that the gal who started it, and I really need to find the name of this business, out of Seattle, she basically started this business because she realized, I don't want to just be buried. She figured something out. She figured out this composting way. One of her really cool stories that she got was there was a gentleman who was a true Pacific Northwesterner. He was a gardener, all these great things. He did this when his passing. And what ended up happening was his sister came with a truck to come and get him. So it was about a yard of the compost. How much you create of yourself when you get composted is about a yard.
Which is great.
And so what ended up happening was she took the yard worth of soil of of her brother, and then all of his friends and family came, and they took a bucket of their friend and put him in the garden with them. And I know it's like so morbid, but then also really sweet, thinking, knowing that their friend, the cycle, but then being like, I'm with my loved one in the garden.
Because it is all like we're cells.
Yeah. But with that being said, so that's like such a different way. And I just wanted to share like Lao style, like with burials, we traditionally are cremated. So like maybe that's not too far off, but I had called my mom like, hey, I'm doing a podcast about funerals. Can you tell me about Lao funerals? And then I'd mentioned something about this burying in a tree. And then of course my mom was like, you want to be buried in a tree? And then I had to explain to her, I was like, well, I want to be turned into compost to be buried in a tree. And then she just let me know, well, you know, Lao style, this is what we would do. And one of the cool things about like different traditional Lao, well, there's traditional and then I call it modern traditional. So like a lot of times in the family, when the person passed away, there's a bathing ceremony. Then my mom was saying like in the States, we don't typically do this, but in Laos, they will keep the family member at a family member's home so people can come and pay respects. Which I thought was like, oh, that's not as morbid as like keeping them away, right? They're hidden. They're at the funeral home. You don't get to see them. You don't get to say goodbye a traditional way. And then you get to say goodbye. You get to celebrate them. And then you have at the funeral, it is typically an open casket if it allows, and the monks will come. And one of the things, and I experienced this in the last couple of years, is like at the actual funeral, if you're very close to the family or person that has passed away, the men, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, is the men will actually shave their head and shave their eyebrows, and they will wear the monk's robes, like the bright orange monk's robes. And then the women will pull their hair back, you know, in a tight bun, and they'll wear all white for the ceremony. And that's like just like a traditional thing that happens. And so I remember seeing that in my adult life and understanding what that was, and just knowing from a cultural perspective, okay, this is not a Western, what we're used to style. And having a moment where now I'm remembering an American white guy made a very insensitive comment in the moment about all the white ladies in the white robes. And I just was like, wanted to just really lay one into him, like, you are in a place of mourning. You are in a place where we need to be respectful, and I get that you don't understand what's happening, and I understand that you're hurt because it's your friend who's laying in the casket right now, but you're kind of an a-hole. You know, anyways, that was just like a side blip to like a quick memory that just popped up. But it was about like what they were wearing and how they were doing what they were doing. And then he was making a comment about like the monks chanting and all this other stuff. And all this to say is be respectful, because we're not going to have these experiences of like all Western type of funerals. And if you're lucky, truly, if you're lucky enough to experience other cultures and their funerals or how they celebrate or how they mourn, it is such
it should be embraced.
It should be embraced, and it's an amazing experience, because it's not always about crying, and it's not always, you know, because like at the wakes,
or about a $10,000 funeral.
Correct.
So those are those Western stereotypical funeral. Where, you know, like it's, you're spending $10,000, your loved one is gone, you're mourning, and you're trying to figure out what to do, and unexpected costs, and then all for like what would be like putting yourself in debt for a funeral would be like not what I would want my loved ones to be doing. I don't know very many people who would, but
I know. Oh wait, I remember now. It's called Recompose. Oh, ecological death care. They're out of Seattle or Auburn. Burien.
There's other options too, because cremation, I guess, is pretty popular. I mean, it's either that or like a traditional casket is normally what is happening. But there is another company called Let Your Love Grow, where you send your ashes of your loved one to this place, and they turn it into soil. Oh. And then they send a bag of soil back to you.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah, so it doesn't have... It might actually be cheaper too, a cheaper alternative.
Yeah, because you're not...
But there's also this other one that I read about that sounds pretty cool, and it's different. So this would be something that might just seem a little weird if you're telling your loved ones you want this process. It's called Eternal Reefs, and it holds cremated remains in these cement balls that are then put into the water in the ocean. And then they create new marine life.
That's cool. I want to be composted and then turned into a coral reef.
Oh, yeah.
No, I want to be both.
Yeah. I did see that sometimes spreading ashes could be like bad for the ecosystem.
This is so
like
hard.
depending. I know it is. So not that like you shouldn't be doing it, but I did read that in some places where ashes are spread a lot, where people are like, this is such a beautiful mountaintop, I'm going to go spread. It has caught, like, people are like, there's a lot of ashes here that have depleted, the natural life that was supposed to be there. But there are alternatives.
Yeah.
And you don't have to just follow, streamline, mainstreamed, taboo.
Yeah. And it's okay if you don't do what your family traditionally does. If,
Yeah.
Just tell my mom to turn me into a tree and turn me into a coral reef if I pass away before early age. Something, it's not funny, but it was like this is taboo in the Lao culture during the 7 days. It's the 7 days before you bury or cremate the person. You cannot cook and or eat noodles if you're a family member.
Wow.
Of the household. You want to know why?
Why?
Because it's like a string that attaches the person that has passed away to this current life. So basically they will never rest and they will never go to heaven or where.
Because you're holding their strings back?
Yeah. No. And then they stay with you and they haunt you forever.
Oh, no.
I just want to haunt from a tree. Or
I wonder how many people
reef.
accidentally eat some noodles and
I know.
ruin everything.
I know.
It's just like chow down. Oops.
I know. And so my mom was telling me, she's like, don't forget about the noodles. I was like, oh yeah, the noodles.
Oh.
So yeah, it's just like the immediate family and the household, that person comes from. My mom reminded me of that. I was like, yeah, when you think about it, yeah, that's like a little wives' tale, but whatever. 7 days I can go without eating noodles.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And there are so many different cultures. Like I read about a country that celebrates when people die, like just as much as they would somebody being born.
Yeah.
And they keep the bodies above ground.
Yeah.
As like a statue. Ooh. They don't use any embalming agencies and stuff, but they like decorate it. They dress it up for holidays. Wow. They pray around it and they love it. So it's just like an exciting thing when somebody passes in this life.
Well, it's like it's not taboo.
And like I guess your mental health stays
until
up.
you're me who's a scaredy cat of the dark and pretty sure you saw that person move.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, what else we got? Did you learn anything else about funerals?
I did, actually. So this one is from wishbox.com. By 2025, Pew Research notes half the world will reside in water-stressed areas. So, and waters, water is one of the things that potable water with the embalming agents. There's a lot of it used. So, just in California, 1 year they used just one funeral home used 293 million gallons.
Ooh.
Yeah, of potable water. And that's a drought. California is like drought.
Oh, yeah.
So they don't have any water to spare.
Yeah, you're right. Dang.
Yeah. Well, such an interesting subject.
It's not taboo. Let's talk about it so it's not taboo.
Yeah, we need to normalize that people are going to pass away. Don't go into debt for your loved ones.
And if they want sustainable and eco-friendly and economical, green funerals might be the way to, or green burials might be a really good way to go.
Yeah. Just something to think of.
Thanks for hanging in there with this interesting topic that we had for you today. Hopefully you found it interesting and enjoyable and you might look into it a little bit more. Until then, thanks for listening to this episode of Recouped. I'm Vicky.
And I'm Michelle.
And if you would like to hear more about how other industries are turning green, be sure to buy us a coffee. You can find the link to our tip jar in the show notes.
And if you would like to learn more about our business and how we make our bags, check us out at www.recoupeddpnw.com.
Follow us on Instagram at Recouped PNW. Everything here is mentioned in our show notes, so take a look. Mm-hmm. Also, if you like what you're hearing, if you like listening to the voices of your ladies of Recouped, if you liked hearing us giggle about things that maybe we shouldn't giggle about, give us a 5-star rating and leave a review and share with your friends and your family and your coworkers. And thanks again for joining us. And
don't
remember
forget
to reduce,
reuse,
and recoup. Till then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.